November 19th, 1987, Washington State. Two young Canadians are crossing the border into America. On a business errand for one of their dads, this couple was making a fun trip out of the job of picking up furnace parts in Seattle, Washington. When the time for them to return home comes and goes, and their lifeless bodies are found 60 miles apart from each other, their families want answers and justice. But that would take 31 years and the help of the killer's second cousin. This is the murder of Jay Cook and Tanya Van Cuylenborg. Justice delayed. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Podorf. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends in Togo, West Africa.
Okay.
Nagasana.
Very nice.
There you go. Hope I said that right.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Then you can like, rate, and review the show. And then other people who are like you, who like to listen to true crime, can also find us.
Yep.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button below.
Please do.
You can find us on Instagram at Hitched to Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. And if you want true crime 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, please go join our closed Facebook group, The In-Laws and Outlaws.
Yep.
Go to Facebook and type in H2H, In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions, and you're in. You can also go to hitchedtohomicide.com, and if you scroll down on the website, there's a spot where it'll take you straight to our closed Facebook group.
Excellent.
So go join. I post lots of other stuff in there. It's a good group of people. We like them a whole lot.
Yep, we appreciate them.
We also now have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send Rob some coffee.
Please do.
There still isn't a Buy Me a Diet Mountain Dew link.
I'm
holding out for it.
I'm desperately searching for you.
You can find that link in our show notes. We appreciate all your messages and emails. Thank you for being with us every single week. We love it.
Absolutely.
This is an older murder case, but a more recent conviction.
Really? How recent?
2021 and then 2023.
Oh, wow. So it just happened.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Wow.
Well, the conviction not too long ago.
Right.
Before I get started, let me thank some sources. This is Monsters, Wikipedia, CBS News, CBC News, the Vancouver Sun, the Vancouver Island CTV News, the State of Washington versus Talbot, the WashingtonHerald.net, Langley Advance Times, Cold Case Canada, and the Abbotsford News.
All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
William Earl Talbot II was born in 1963 to parents William Earl Talbot Sr. and Patricia.
Okay.
He grows up in the Woodinville area of Washington State near Monroe, Washington. He has two sisters, Inga and Melina. The family lives west of a bridge over the Snoqualmie River. His early life is marked by significant family turmoil and violence. His youngest sister, Melina, described him as an angry child who had issues with anger management from a very young age.
Don't drive angry.
Don't drive angry.
Don't drive angry. Melina has said that there were incidents of physical abuse, including being kicked by William when he was wearing heavy boots in 1984.
Wow.
It was so bad that the police were called. His parents, William Sr. and Mom, Patricia, took him to counseling after some of these terrible outbursts, but it didn't seem to help any of his violent behavior.
Wow.
Violent behavior like dropping the family cat, Nikki, into a well, forcing the family to retrieve it and sterilize said well.
Wow.
I also read that it was the neighbor's cat. Either way, poor Nikki.
Jeez.
According to his sister Melina, quote, he felt like life owed him something, end quote. He was apparently a smart kid, but he was failing in school.
Okay.
He also apparently was always looking for approval from adults.
Hmm.
Don't know how you get that by acting out. Or maybe he just wanted attention.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it just sounded like he wanted attention.
Maybe. When his sister Inga is 11, William sexually assaults her.
Oh, no.
I read that he held her down on the bed and touched her inappropriately. I don't know if there was more to it and maybe she just didn't talk about it.
Right.
But that's bad enough.
Sure.
By the time he's 16, William had said to his father that he wanted to run him over with his car.
What?
He told his dad that he planned to run him over with a car as soon as he got his driver's license, saying, "I'll show you."
Wow. Okay.
So the older he gets, the violent tendencies are just escalating.
Yeah.
But his mom kind of took up for him all the time. That's just Bill. That's just Kill Bill.
Go home to your mother!
That's just him being violent.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, don't mind him.
Silly Bill.
But after the whole, I'm going to run you over with my car incident, his dad threw him out of the house.
I can't imagine why.
And he lived in a trailer behind his family home.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
At
he's
16?
16.
Wow.
Yeah. Or maybe even before 16, because he said when he turned 16 and got his driver's license. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
But then he is welcomed back into the house. Just a short time after this, in 1984, he's arrested for assault because William broke down a door inside the house when his sister tried to change the radio station, injuring her so severely that her parents had to take her to the hospital.
Wow.
Now, I had some fights with my sister in the bathroom in the morning, getting ready for school.
Yeah.
But the police were never called. Maybe my mom thought about it. I don't know. Two girls trying to get ready in the same bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah, not a good mix.
Then he was barred from the family home again. After they have to take their daughter to the hospital, he's barred from the family home again. He's arrested, but instead of being charged, he's given a $150 fine. That's all.
That's it?
That's all, folks.
That's all, folks.
Wow.
So he thinks he can get away with whatever he wants to do, and there's really no consequences. He's not going to go to jail. He's just going to have to pay a little money.
Wow.
Later, when he does have roommates, he is kind of a normal person, and he did have at least one really good friend named Mike.
Okay.
And William is also close to his grandfather, and his grandfather would take him camping in Washington State, in the dense woods, where the serial killers live. In 1986, on November 24th, his grandfather passes away, and this is devastating for him.
Yeah.
And then after this, he lost his job, and then his car died, which to me sounded a little bit like a country western song. I lost my job, my car died, I threw the cat Nicky in the well. It's a lot.
Well, in this occasion, I think it's appropriate for me to add a little bit of drama to this.
Okay.
I lost my car. I threw Nicky down the well.
I don't know what some of those chords were in there, but okay.
Sound like a damn country song.
But William's pretty estranged from his family from this point on. After his grandfather dies, he's kind of estranged.
Yeah.
And then his mother dies in 2015. And for 20 years after this, he didn't even acknowledge the rest of his family.
Really?
He didn't pick up the phone when they called. He didn't answer emails. He didn't attend family events like weddings or graduations. And he even missed his mom's funeral in 2015.
So he was kind of living like the Unabomber.
He's a little Ted Kaczynski. He goes a little Ted Kaczynski. And he is kind of living like a hermit because he's either at home or he's working and driving a truck.
Okay.
Although he does bowl a little. We'll get to that in a little bit.
All right.
But as William gets older, he's pretty good with girls. Like he would manipulate them and use them and then discard them. As an adult, the people who knew him thought he was super strong. Like, again, he would go bowling and he was the guy who could break the pins.
Really?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
And even though he was known to have this temper and he was estranged from his family, William has never been arrested for anything.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tanya Van Cuylenborg was born on March 7th, 1969 in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Her nickname is Sweetie.
Oh, sweetie.
And I think that that's what most people called her.
Mm-hmm.
Her parents are Bill and Jean Carruthers Van Cuylenborg. She has an older brother named John. Her high school photo said that she was known as Sweetie and she wanted to be remembered for her fine sense of sarcasm and many different laughs.
Who does that sound like?
Me too, Sweetie. Me too. I think if your name is Sweetie and you're sarcastic, that's just the best combo ever.
It really is.
She wanted to be a photographer or a vet because she loved animals. And in 1982, she really started working on her parents because she wanted a dog. And she got a golden retriever and named her Tessa. And Tessa was just the best thing. You got to love a girl who loves her dog.
Absolutely.
Yeah. She lived in Saanich, British Columbia. By the way, there are lots of Indian names in here. And if I mess one up, and I'm sure I'm gonna, even though I look up how to pronounce it, when I get going, sometimes it just doesn't come out of my mouth the way I want it to.
Yeah, we don't need a lot of corrections.
So I apologize now if I
Yeah.
get these wrong.
Yeah.
But she lives in Saanich, British Columbia.
Okay.
And Tanya and her brother John are super close. This is a really tight-knit family. She liked to play tennis and basketball. She was quite the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
She liked to play the guitar, and her favorite band was U2. And I read that, and I thought that's very 80s.
Yeah,
Very
it is.
1980s.
Pretty
Yeah.
much. Yep.
She's also a really good sailor, and she and her family would go out on their boat, and she was just an adventurer. And she even took a trip to London and Paris. She did this with her best friend, May Robeson, her lifelong friend. And this kind of gave her the travel bug. And she started saving money because she wanted to travel to Holland to visit her family because they had family there.
Oh.
Now, I will say this. I read that when she came back from Europe, she told her dad she was dropping out of school because she just wanted to start traveling now. It was time to start traveling now.
How'd that go over?
Well, her dad told her no, she needed to stay in school.
Yeah, you think?
But she's in school and working part-time as a dog walker and a waitress at Mr. Pickwick's Fish and Chips in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a place that Rob would frequent.
Anybody that knows me knows that I
He
love
likes his fish and chips.
fish and chips.
I
yes.
actually had gluten-free fish and chips when I was in London the last time.
Yeah.
It was delish.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Tanya's in high school, this is where she meets Jay Cook. J. Roland Cook was born on December 16th, 1966 in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. His parents are Gordon and Leona, and he has two sisters, Laura Lee, who goes by Laura, and Kelly. Jay played the bass guitar,
There you go.
and he really loved music. He had a passion for it. He also loved the water like Tanya. He liked boating with his family and just generally being outdoors.
So he was a good guy. Just
Yeah.
a normal, natural, and good guy.
Yeah, and after graduation, he worked on a fishing boat and in a pizza restaurant. Now, there's a story by his sister where one night after a shift, he rode his bike 3 hours through the rain and the darkness to a cabin where his friends were staying for a weekend, balancing a pizza the whole way there, just to bring them food.
I'm sure that pizza tasted really good after 3 hours in the rain.
Well, wait, what's that saying about bad pizza and
Oh,
sex?
Yeah, bad pizza is like bad sex. Even bad pizza is good. Yeah.
Well, I like pizza enough that, you know what, I think I would still eat it even if it came in a soggy box and it was 3 hours old. I've eaten
Exactly.
cold pizza a lot.
Pizza? For breakfast?
When I was in college, I've had cold pizza for breakfast
Absolutely.
before.
We all
Yeah.
did. Yep.
There's also a story about him that during a party, he sees that one of his friends has had way too much to drink, and he got him to a hospital before the alcohol poisoning ended his
wow.
friend's life.
So he's just a good friend,
He's a
good guy.
Good guy. He's a really good guy.
Yeah.
According to his sister, he was a bit of an absent-minded professor. He had this habit of losing his clothes.
I would know nothing about that.
He would come home from school without his jacket and have no idea where it was. He's easygoing. He's also a hard worker. But in 1987, he's working for his dad, who had a furnace heating installation repair shop
Okay.
called Cook and Talbot heating specialists.
All right.
His dad's partner, Talbot, only has one T on the end, and William Talbot, that we've already spoken about, has two T's on the end. No relation.
So just purely coincidental.
Purely coincidental.
All right.
Yeah. I did read that Jay had a dream of being a marine biologist.
Oh.
Now, like I said, I think they met while they were in high school, but he's older than she is by 2 years. So they're dating, but he's out of high school and she's a senior in high school. All the sources I found said that they were high school sweethearts, but I don't think that qualifies
Right.
as being high school sweethearts. They met in high school.
Right.
But these two began dating in the spring of 1987.
Okay.
Everyone said they were a loving couple who were devoted to each other. They liked to spend most of their free time together, and they were always at each other's homes. They really respected each other. And according to Jay's sister, Laura, quote, they were thrilled to be together.
No.
Now, in November of 1987, Jay's dad needs some furnace parts from Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
And his dad asked him if he would drive to Seattle and go to Gensco, which was in South Seattle, to pick up the parts.
All right.
And Jay says, okay, I'll go. And he asks Tanya if she would go too.
Right.
She does try to get her BFF, May Robeson, to come along, but May couldn't go.
Okay.
I don't think that she wanted to be alone with him. They'd only been together 6 months.
Right.
I don't think she wanted, not that she didn't want to be alone with him, but she didn't want to spend the night with him.
Right. She's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. So she tried to get her BFF to come along too,
Gotcha.
but she just couldn't do it.
Right.
So on November 18th, 1987, Jay and Tanya leave British Columbia for Seattle in Jay's dad's bronze 1977 Ford Club van.
Classic.
That's the kind of van the back door opens and you're waiting for the band to spill out.
A perfectly good van.
It's not the serial killer van. It's
Yeah.
like the band van.
Yeah.
They're driving to Seattle and spending the night along the way. The plan was to pick up the parts and then stop and sleep in the van somewhere between there and home.
Okay.
And they're supposed to make it back on November 19th. Now, Jay's dad gave him cash for a hotel,
Right.
but the plan was to sleep in the van outside of Gensco in Seattle. They're going to pocket the cash,
There you
keep
go.
the money for something else.
Okay.
And Tanya and Jay drive to Victoria. This is a more scenic route to get to the United States from Canada.
Mhm.
But I read that Jay wanted to make the trip memorable because she was bringing her camera with her and she liked to take pictures.
Okay.
So when they get to Victoria, they take the Black Ball MV Coho ferry from Victoria Harbor to Port Angeles, Washington.
Okay.
They arrive around 4 p.m. They go through customs in the United States. Then they drove southeast on Route 101, trying to get to Bremerton. And they stop one time at a gas station in Hoodsport for snacks, where the store clerk, whose name was Judy Stone, gave them directions.
Okay.
Why, you might ask? Well, because Jay had missed his exit.
Which is something I would not know about either.
He missed the exit, yeah.
Right.
They also stopped at a Ben's Deli to get food in Allen, Washington, not too long after that. But in Bremerton at 10:16 p.m., they catch a second ferry across Puget Sound to Seattle, which docked at 11:35 p.m. that night.
All right.
But the last people to see them alive was when they were preparing to get onto the ferry.
Hmm.
Now, what happens next is a mystery. It's believed that Tanya and Jay were most likely abducted after they arrived in Seattle.
Okay.
The supplier at Gensco Heating waited for Jay for hours the next morning to pick up the furnace parts, but no one showed up.
Hmm.
Not to mention, neither Tanya or Jay have called home. Now, I realize it's 1987. We did this thing where we found a payphone.
Yeah.
I did it plenty.
Yep.
And you could call home, collect, and you just give like a false name.
Yeah.
And your parents or whomever picked up the phone would be like, no, we're not accepting the charges. But that was to show that you were safe or you had gotten to where you needed to be.
Hello, operator. I'd like to make a collect call to...
Yeah. I mean, I did that when I was in high school because we lived way out in the country and we had an exchange on the phone that wasn't where I went to school. So it was long distance. So anytime that I needed to call home, I'd call collect, and then we'd have a little code when the operator would say, "Will you accept the charges?" And I'd say the code, and my parents would say, "No, we're not accepting it." That would be the code to come pick me up from high school.
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
mean, these are the things you had to do when you had to pay for long distance and there weren't cell phones.
It was so tough.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
But when these two don't make it home on the 19th of November, Tanya's father calls Jay's parents, the Cooks. And these two families had never met before because remember, they'd only been dating for 6 months.
Yeah.
And they hadn't heard from Jay either. And on the 20th, Tanya's father and Jay's father call the police and they report them missing. But the police wouldn't file a missing persons report for 3 days.
Really?
Because they said there was no foul play and that they were adults.
Wow.
She's 18, he's 20, although being an adult in Canada, I'm pretty sure is 19.
Okay.
But Tanya's dad wanted to go look for her on his own, and he even attempted to carry out an air search.
Wow.
But the forests are so dense in Washington state.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
Washington.
how do you even find anything from the air even?
Yeah.
5 days later, on November 24th, 1987, on a rural road called Parson Creek in Alger in Skagit County, Washington. Again, I hope I'm getting that right. Just
doing
south
great.
of Bellingham. Thank you very much. I have got one fan out there telling me I'm doing it right. But they're in Skagit County, Washington, just south of Bellingham.
Right.
And a passerby named Vic Wold was collecting cans and he sees a body in a ditch. It's Tanya.
Wow.
Her body is partially nude and she's been shot in the back of the head. Now, he contacts the county sheriff's department and detectives David Willard and Jim Mower are on the scene quickly.
Okay.
And because her pants are off and she's nude from the waist down, authorities are assuming she's been sexually assaulted.
Sure.
And she had been. There were scratch marks and semen on her body. There were zip ties found near her body. So police are thinking that at one point she'd been bound. They also believed she'd been killed somewhere else and the body moved there after the fact.
Right.
Now, police inform her family, and the first hunch of the authorities is, what do you think?
It's the boyfriend.
Yeah, that Jay had murdered her.
Right.
Yeah, because he's still missing. And that's the statistic, that the boyfriend or the significant other or the husband,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
or the wife. I'm going to be an equal opportunist here when it comes to homicide.
Yeah.
But both families said that that's just not a possibility. That didn't happen.
Right.
The next day, November 25th, 1987, at a tavern 20 miles north in Bellingham, Washington, a bartender at Essie's Tavern is out back. He's taking his smoke break, and he notices some keys and a wallet on the ground. They're Tanya's. He decides to pick them up, take them back in the bar, and put them in the lost and found.
Yeah, sure.
But first he looks at the name. And then he's watching the news and he hears about Tanya's death and he realizes this is evidence in a murder.
Yeah.
So he called the police and they go over and they start looking all around this tavern's property. And this is when they find a pair of surgical gloves and a half-empty box of .380 handgun ammunition and zip ties that match the ones used on Tanya.
Wow.
And so more police show up and they fan out from there and they find the bronze Ford van and it's near the local Greyhound bus station. Now, inside the van is the money order for the parts, still there, that his dad gave him.
Right.
But the van has been basically trashed and it is covered in blood that belonged to both Tanya and Jay. So remember, the detectives think Tanya was killed someplace else and then placed there in the ditch.
Right.
And there's blood everywhere in this van. There was blood on a comforter. There were more rubber gloves. There was plastic zip ties. And the police are now thinking, this is a killer with a plan.
Yeah.
He's got his bag filled with, zip ties and gloves and probably duct tape. And he had planned this rape and murder.
Yeah, the murderer's starter kit.
It's a little starter kit. And the gloves and the zip ties are just proof of that.
Yeah.
And also in the van were Camel cigarette butts in the ashtray.
Yeah.
But where's Jay?
Yeah.
His blood is in the van, but where is he?
Right.
And by the way, neither one of those kids smoked. The next day is Thanksgiving, November 26th, 1987. Pheasant hunter Scott Walker and his friend stumble upon Jay Cook's body near a bridge over the Snoqualmie River.
Okay.
They're in rural Snohomish County, and a blue blanket covered Jay's head and torso. His body is about 60 miles from where Tanya's body is found.
Interesting that the body would be half covered with a blanket.
Just half covered, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He's been beaten around the head with rocks. He's been strangled with twine that is tied to 2 dog collars, and both are still wrapped around his neck.
Wow.
So severe are his head wounds, there's tons of blood stains on his clothing, and also there was a pack of Camel cigarettes and some tissues stuffed down his throat.
Oh my gosh.
Camel cigarettes, just like the ones
Yeah.
found in the van.
Right.
Nearby, they're going to find bloody rocks in the grass the next day.
Okay.
So authorities are thinking that Jay was probably murdered first. Get him out of the way.
Sure.
Then Tanya was raped and murdered, but the crime scenes are scattered over 3 counties between finding the keys and the van and the rubber gloves and 2 different bodies. And at each site, police find these interlocked zip ties.
Okay.
But neither Jay nor Tanya had obvious marks on their wrists or their ankles. Now, the police don't have a whole lot to go on, but they collect all the evidence they can. There's semen on Tanya's pants and on her body, but it's 1987.
Right.
They also find an unidentified palm print on the van and fingerprints on the door handle, but they have no match to these prints.
Yet. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
The police are stumped. Nobody saw these 2 kids past the time they boarded the ferry to Seattle. But just a month after Jay and Tanya's bodies are found, their families start getting threatening letters from an anonymous sender.
Really?
Who was claiming responsibility for the murders.
No way.
They were taunting the police in these letters, saying they would never be caught.
Wow.
The author of the letters said he hated Canadians, which was his motive to kill, and that the opportunity to murder Jay and Tanya was, quote, too good to pass up, end quote.
Wow. Wow.
The letters contained graphic descriptions of the murders of Jay and Tanya.
Were they accurate?
Well, I don't know how accurate they were. I really don't.
Right.
And a lot of it is fiction.
Gotcha.
These letters are going to come for a year. And they included Hallmark greeting cards with pictures of like teddy bears and kittens. Yeah, cards would come for Father's Day or Mother's Day and Christmas. And some of the cards were signed Tanya or Jay.
Wow.
And the letters were postmarked from Seattle, Los Angeles, New York, and Canada.
Wow. So whoever's doing this is transient.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like I said, the letters are going to be sent for about a year. And the first letters were dated December 3rd, 1987, which is about 2 weeks after their murders. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, how horrible do you have to be to send a Mother's Day card and sign your dead daughter's name to it?
Yeah. Once again, there's a special place in hell.
Yeah, there's a corner where you have to learn how to play the accordion.
And you have to face in the corner like Time Out.
So I say gotta be free. So I say gotta be me.
And play the accordion. Yeah. One of the letters mentioned true crime author Anne Rule. So police call Anne and they're like, hey, you got any idea who might be sending us these letters or sending their parents these letters?
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, I do.
Really?
And she gives them a name of a man who'd written to her. And when he did, he signed his real name. But then the letters just stop. And the police don't follow up.
What?
They don't know where else to go, even though she's given this name.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
In 1989, an episode of Unsolved Mysteries airs detailing the murders, but nothing comes of it. In 1994, they do a DNA profile on the semen sample found on Tanya's body and clothes, and they label it Individual A.
Okay.
But it's now been 7 years, and the police aren't any closer to figuring out who murdered Tanya and Jay. In 1995, Detective Jim Scharf of the Snohomish County Sheriff's Department forms a cold case team, and the murders of Tanya and Jay are at the top of their list.
Okay.
And here's some of the stuff that they're looking at.
All right.
Tanya's Minolta 35mm camera is missing from the scene after the murders. Remember, she took her camera with her to take
Right.
pictures.
Sure.
It wasn't with her or her things found at the bar under the porch, and police think that the killer might have taken it as a trophy or to avoid leaving evidence behind.
Got it.
The blue blanket that Jay's body is covered with was not in the van when these two left town. So they believe the killer brought it to the crime scene themselves.
Oh, how nice of him. Jeez.
Yeah, right? Mighty nice.
Wow.
A jacket and a backpack belonging to Jay and Tanya were also missing from the van. And don't forget the twine with the 2 red dog collars, which police think is unusual in its own right.
Right.
I mean, why not just use the twine? Why do you
Yeah.
have to have dog collars with it?
Because you're twisted.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Then in 2010, after 23 years, and this new cold case team, the police want to look at these letters that were sent
Okay.
because there's DNA on these letters.
Yeah.
Somebody licked an envelope.
Sure.
So they release details of these letters that were sent. First, the story was on Washington's Most Wanted, a weekly television show on KCPQ TV that features cold cases.
Okay.
And I had to think, what if your state has so many cold cases that you have your own Most Wanted weekly television show?
If your state has so many murders that it has its own television show, you might live in Washington.
You might live in Washington State or Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we love both of those states.
Oh, yeah.
They're beautiful.
Absolutely.
Love that coast.
Yep.
But a man watches Washington's Most Wanted, and he recognized the handwriting on the show from the cards, and he contacts the police.
Really? That's random.
Yeah. And then an anonymous caller also left the man's name, which apparently was a super common name like John Smith or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They searched the database of the names that the Skagit County detectives built for the case.
Right.
And they locate the man's name along with his date of birth in the case files.
Okay.
And this guy's name was actually added to the case file during the initial investigation into the letters. Want to know why?
Why?
Because Anne Rule, the crime author, the true crime author,
Yeah.
gave the police this guy's name.
Oh, that's right. And they never checked it out.
Yeah, but what they discovered was that he was a mentally ill, transient man whose last known address was in a homeless shelter in East Vancouver.
Gotcha.
But he hadn't even been there in 8 months. And this guy is now 70 years old.
Oh, okay.
So when they finally track him down, he said he'd read about the murders in the days after the victims' bodies were discovered. And he was at a really low point in his life, and he wanted to lash out. He was angry about how he'd been treated by his fellow Canadians. But when they interview him, he tells them, quote, "It was a horrible and stupid thing to do," end quote.
Right.
And the statute of limitations was over for harassment. And that was the end of that trail.
Okay.
And the case goes cold again.
Wow.
Meanwhile, in 2013, a woman named Chelsea Rusted is online subscribing to Ancestry.com.
Oh.
She wants to learn more about her family's history. Then in 2015, she won a DNA testing kit from Ancestry DNA through a Facebook contest where they asked for favorite Halloween memories. And she posted a photo of herself in a ballerina costume at the age of 7, and she won the contest.
Nice.
She spit in the tube that they sent to her, and then she sent it back to them. And after she got her results, one of her cousins mentioned to her that she could upload her profile to a third-party site that helped people find blood relatives.
You know, I did that same thing, the spitting in the tube and sending it, and did the whole profile thing. And I found out that I have so many cousins. It's amazing.
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword, all of the DNA stuff, because people will find long-lost relatives.
Sure.
They'll also find out secrets that have been kept from them.
Yeah.
So, there's one documentary out there where all of these kids, their parents never talked to them about the fact that their dad wasn't actually their dad. And this one OBGYN who was like a resident at the time was the guy whose sperm was used for all these different kids. And there are like 40 of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And they all kind of found out one by one because they uploaded their DNA profiles.
No secrets anymore.
And there aren't any secrets anymore.
Yeah.
And they've actually like found this guy and like gotten together with him, which is pretty interesting. But at the time, it was highly illegal for someone else. There weren't sperm banks. This was like in the 50s.
Oh.
So it was kind of an illegal thing to do. So once the moms got pregnant, they just didn't say anything else about it.
Gotcha.
So the DNA thing can be great.
Right.
But it can also be, hard on a family.
Yeah, especially when you have to pay college for 40 kids. Just
Yes.
kidding.
Agreed. But she uploads her DNA to something called GEDmatch or GEDmatch. It's a public genealogy database.
Okay.
And then she just forgets all about it.
Right.
3 years later, Jim Scharf of the Snohomish County Sheriff's Department is inspired by the capture of the Golden State Killer, who was caught through the use of genetic genealogy.
Okay.
And this is where this huge database of DNA that everybody's put in there is used to find matches for cold cases,
Okay.
where police actually have DNA,
Right.
but they don't have a match to their killer.
Got it.
Because all they're looking for is somebody who's a relative, and then they can work their way backwards.
Right.
Parabon Nanolabs is actually brought in to assist. These are the people who do this. And they do what is called a snapshot DNA phenotyping, which is where, based on your DNA traits, they make a composite sketch of the person.
Oh, like a facial sketch?
Yes.
Wow.
And they do this with the DNA found on Tanya's body and clothes. So based on your DNA, it'll say, he was blonde, or he had blue eyes, or he had a widow's peak, or he couldn't stand to hear people chew. What's that one called? Misophonia or something like that.
Yeah.
I have that.
Yeah.
And it was correct when my stuff came back, when my DNA profile came back. It said, you don't like cilantro and you can't stand to hear people chew.
That's it.
Stop chewing so loudly.
That's it.
If I ever commit murder, it will be because somebody was chewing too loud.
That's why I chew in the different room.
You do not. You do not.
I know.
But they do this composite sketch of a person, and they do like 3 different sketches. This is what they would have looked like in 1987. This is what they would have looked like 10 years later. This is what they would look like, 30 years later.
Right.
All with this DNA that they found on Tanya's body and clothes.
That's amazing.
And on April 11th, 2018, this sketch is released to the public, showing this person at all 3 ages. And they get 130 tips,
Wow.
but nothing that they could really use.
Really?
They were all dead ends, with the exception of one man who was a bartender in Bellingham, Washington. He said he had seen someone who looked like the sketch in his bar in November of 1987,
Whoa.
which of course is the same time
Yeah.
of the murders.
Wow.
Now, how he remembered that from 30 years before, I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe because they were in Bellingham, and that's where the van was found and where all of her stuff was found, her keys and her wallet,
Sure.
maybe he just made a mental note of that.
Right.
But the Snohomish cold case crew didn't stop there.
Hmm.
They get a woman named Cece Moore, a genetic genealogist, to upload the DNA from Tanya's pants to the database, and she got a match to 2 people who shared enough DNA with the unknown suspect, suspect A,
Right.
to be second cousins.
Oh, wow.
And one of these cousins was Chelsea Rusted.
Look at that.
So just by chance, she wins this Facebook contest
Yeah.
and spits in the tube.
Wow.
C.C. Moore built a family tree based on the DNA matches and traced the lineage back to one common ancestor. So she's working backwards, building branches on both sides of this person's DNA tree.
Sure.
Now, stay with me on this one.
Okay.
Chelsea was the killer's grandmother's brother's granddaughter.
My neighbor's wife's kid's daughter's dog's kid.
Yeah. It makes me think of Ferris Bueller.
My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend.
That's it.
Now, Chelsea had done some work on Ancestry.com, and she'd put together her family tree. But she found out, as we all have, if you've ever used Ancestry, the further away from your own family you go, the harder it gets to piece it all together.
Sure.
But she'd pieced together the Talbot branch of her family tree while figuring out the descendants of her great-aunt Blanche. She had never met any of the Talbots, but the kids were mentioned by name on Ancestry, in yearbook photos, etc. I mean, Ancestry will give you that little green leaf, and it's like you've got a hint.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what she was getting.
Okay.
And a man named William Talbot II was on the tree, but he really didn't have a digital footprint. Everybody else had like Facebook accounts or yearbook photos or something.
Yeah. Because he was kind of being a hermit.
He's being a hermit.
Yeah.
No digital footprint.
Gotcha.
But in fact, William Talbot, who still lived in Woodinville, Washington, had never married. He didn't have kids. No shared family photos. He was someone that his family didn't even seem to talk or post about, like somebody who maybe cut ties with their family a long time ago.
It's like he didn't even exist.
Yeah.
Wow.
So with Chelsea's information in their back pocket, police come to her. They actually knock on her door. They just knock on the door. Hey, we need to talk to you about a 30-year-old murder.
Oh, my
We
gosh.
think one of your relatives is the killer.
What would you do?
I mean, what do you do?
You want some coffee?
Yeah, let's talk about the killer that's in your family.
Wow.
And when they get there, they tell her it's William Talbot II. And she's like, hang on a second. She opens up her computer. She gets into her Ancestry account, and she's like showing the police, here are my little green leaves. He is my second cousin.
Wow.
But William had never been arrested. He had no criminal past. Still, the undercover police follow him for days. William is now a truck driver for SeaTac, and he drives routes from where he lived in Washington to Seattle. And one day, while they're following him, he's sitting at a red light, and he opens the door to his semi, and a paper cup falls out into the street.
Oh, you can't make that up.
Can't make that up.
Wow.
I also read that he placed the cup in the street like a litter bug, but I like the first story a whole lot better.
Yeah, the police are going, thanks for the gumball,
Yeah,
Mickey.
yeah, that was fortuitous.
Wow.
So they pull up, they pick up the cup, and there's enough saliva for a DNA test. And it comes back as a match to the DNA left on Tanya's clothes and body.
Wow.
And Jay's body is found under the rural bridge over the Snoqualmie River, just 7 miles from where William grew up in Woodinville, Washington State.
Whoa.
7 miles away from where he lived.
Whoa.
On May 18th, 2018, police arrest William Earl Talbot II for the murder of Tanya Van Cuylenborg and Jay Cook.
Wow.
Now, interestingly enough, William's grandfather, remember him? He
Yeah.
died on November 24th, 1986, just 1 year before the deaths of Jay and Tanya. Almost
Really?
on the anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was he not celebrating, but was he like doing this in honor of his grandfather some twisted way?
I don't know, but it was kind of known around the people that he was at least kind of friends with
Yeah.
that after these two murders happened, that William seemed to kind of change.
Huh?
And not for the worse, for the better.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it was sort of like a release for him.
Yeah, I don't know. He apparently he became like happier or more amenable. I mean, I don't know.
Wow.
Because he did try to get back together with his family
Really?
after these murders. And then he cut him off once more. Only this time, he even cut off his best friend, Mike. So after they have him in custody, there are people who do not think that William is a killer, and they wrote letters to the police about how great he was. So is he like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of guy?
And I thought he was like living as a hermit somewhere. How would they even know?
I mean, I guess, the dudes down at the bowling lane think he's cool because he's busting pins.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
Whatever.
that makes him a nice guy.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is when they go to trial, the validity of using genetic genealogy to convict a killer by DNA is a little iffy. So the prosecution needed an airtight case. So they focused on the DNA they found at the crime scene, the genetic genealogy reports, the handprint found on the van that matched William Talbot's,
Ooh.
and interviews with people who knew him.
Okay.
And when his friend Mike gets on the witness stand,
Yeah.
he tells the jury that he remembered seeing Jay's van, the bronze Ford van, parked outside the Talbot family home in the days following the murder.
Well, that's some pretty good evidence.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Can't get around that one.
No.
Yeah.
What a good friend you are, Mike. He's probably like, damn, I wish I hadn't cut him off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's going, thanks for nothing.
Yeah. But William's attorneys are going to say that just because he was in contact with Jay and Tanya, that didn't make him their killer.
What?
Even though his semen
Yeah.
is on Tanya's clothes and her body, that didn't prove he was her killer. That only proved that he'd had sex with her. And they said the sex was consensual. So this 18-year-old girl who'd been dating this guy for 6 months wants her best friend to come on the trip too. And he's trying to say that this sex was consensual.
I guess if that's all you've got in your defense, I guess
Gotta
you're
go
gonna
for
use-
it.
Yeah, that's what you're going to use.
Yeah.
Okay.
But still, there's nothing that proved he'd actually murdered the two of them. But the prosecution is saying, well, if the sex was consensual, William, why didn't Tanya get dressed before she's killed a few days later?
Yeah.
It's cold in November in Washington State,
Right.
and she died right after intercourse. So he had to have been the one who murdered her, and
Right.
that's what they say to the jury.
Okay.
The prosecution also has the zip ties, and they took DNA from these zip ties, and there was more than 1 or 2 strands of DNA on these zip ties. A bunch of people had handled them.
Right.
But the genealogist was able to separate it all out and match at least some of it directly to William.
Oh, wow.
Now, his defense attorneys are saying, well, he didn't own a dog, so we don't know where those, the dog collars would have come from. He didn't own a dog. He didn't smoke. All of these things they're trying to say, none of this could have been him.
Sure.
But after 31 years, this jury goes back to deliberate
Right.
for 2.5 days. And on July 28th, 2019, they found him.
I'm hoping they said guilty.
They found him guilty.
There you go.
And he's given life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Good.
And really, it was the whole consensual sex thing that got him. Because they're like, well, if it was consensual, why was she killed right after
Sure.
the sex? And she doesn't have her clothes on, right?
Right.
But then on December 6th, 2021, his conviction is overturned
What?
on jury bias, stating that one of the jurors had experienced domestic abuse in the past and didn't disclose it. So it's a technicality.
Oh, man.
But a year later, in December of 2022, the Washington State Supreme Court reinstated the sentence, saying that the defense had their opportunity to dismiss this juror,
Yeah.
and they didn't.
Right.
I mean, if you don't ask the right questions when you're picking the jury, that's on you.
Right.
So in January of 2023, his murder convictions were reinstated.
Good.
Now, he has been in custody since 2018. So from the moment they picked him up, he's
Sure.
never been out of jail or prison.
Right.
But there were no legal grounds for this. So finally, these two families, the Cooks and the Van Cuylenborgs, they get a little bit of closure, just a little bit.
Sure.
But parents had passed away, and they went to their grave not putting their child's killer in prison.
That's sad.
But this set precedent in the courts, and genetic genealogy can now be used in court. And today, William sits in the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla.
Walla Walla.
Walla Walla, Washington.
Yep.
This is a case that took so long to solve. He flew under the radar forever.
Yeah.
But what is it that Keith Morrison always says on Dateline?
I don't know.
That pesky DNA. It'll get you every time.
Yep.
Even if it takes 31 years.
Wow.
But that is the case and the story of Tanya Van Cuylenborg and Jay Cook. And that's all I have to say about that.
You know, what did we do before DNA?
Well, they took that DNA in 1987.
Right.
Before they could match DNA.
Sure.
The one thing that they could match was your blood type from the semen. So you got to hand it to them. They did a really good job of preserving the evidence.
Yeah, they did.
And it came in handy, came back. I did want to tell you, I read where Chelsea Rusted, the second cousin who put their DNA on the website.
Yeah.
The families of both Jay and Tanya are friends with her.
Nice.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
She actually came to the trial to be there to support those families.
And it's just amazing this close to not doing the DNA spitting in the tube thing.
Yeah.
It would have never been solved.
Yeah, just,
Wow.
Yeah, she wins the kit on a random contest, spits in the tube, and then her cousin is like, "Hey, you should upload it to this site as well." And she did. She had no idea what spitting in that tube would mean to so many people, right?
How many dominoes had to fall in order for him to be convicted?
And they did.
Yeah.
And they did.
Well. All right. Well, let's move on to a little bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right. For this week, let's start off with number one.
Wait a minute. You're not doing like 10 in a minute? It's not a speed. It's not a speed.
No, I
speed.
can't.
Bless your heart.
I can't do that. It's too much work.
Okay.
It's too much pressure.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good last week.
It was.
I'll
fun.
let you off with 3 this
Right.
week.
So number one for this week is losers weepers.
Losers, weepers,
Yes.
finders, keepers.
There you go. A New Hampshire man accused of pilfering items from a secondhand store says he was confused by the business's name.
Okay.
Finders keepers.
I thought you were talking about the Goodwill.
No, you had it right the first
I
time.
had it right the first
Yeah.
time.
Police said Reuben Pavin was shown on video taking a grill from the porch of a thrift shop.
Okay.
I thought it was there for the taking, he told WCVB TV in Boston.
Because it's finders, keepers.
Yeah, because he said the sign did say finders keepers, so I took it and I took it home. A couple of weeks later, the stuff is still there on the porch. So I'm thinking to myself, well, finders keepers. They probably just put the stuff out there for people to take.
Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
He's lying like a rug, y'all.
The video shows a child helping him.
Oh.
And then he said, I just want to clear my name and say that I'm not a bad dad. I'm the best dad in the world.
I'm just teaching my son early how to steal.
Oh, my gosh. Oh. Okay, number 2, Revenge of the Nerds.
Which is one of my very favorite movies.
I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
A self-styled video prankster was
nerds. Sorry, couldn't help it. I'm a nerd, so I had to do it.
A self-styled video prankster was arrested for battery after he allegedly gave wedgies to strangers outside a Florida movie theater.
So somebody posted in the In-Laws and Outlaws about an atomic wedgie.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was, but quickly I was told inside the group. Yeah,
exactly. Manatee County Sheriff's investigators reported that Charles Ross, 18, grabbed people by the back of the pants and pulled them up, but they were too embarrassed to want to pursue charges. That didn't matter, though, because in each instance, a Ross associate was filming the crime with a camera, providing ample evidence.
Oh.
Yeah, a police report said Ross is known for his videotaping pranks and harassing people in Manatee County, then putting the footage on YouTube.
Oh, I thought you were going to say TikTok. That's a TikTok video if I've ever heard of one.
I know. A recent video of Ross kissing strangers has garnered nearly 400,000 views.
Ooh, no.
I know. All right, number 3, and finally, I love this one.
Okay.
Ninjas with guns. An Illinois teenager who was shot in the groin blamed it on a pair of ninjas, reported the Chicago Tribune. The teen told police that two men wearing all black with ninja masks jumped out, and one of them shot him with a semi-automatic handgun.
Ooh, in the groin, too.
But after interviewing other witnesses and reviewing surveillance video, the police concluded that the ninjas did not exist.
Well, the ninjas were a better story, probably.
The teen later admitted that he was driving in a vehicle with several girls and playing with the gun when it discharged on his lap and struck him.
You had to know there was a girl involved in that.
Absolutely.
But this reminds me of the cop. I think he was a cop, and he was standing in front of like a classroom of kids, and he was talking about gun safety, I think. Someone will email me and tell me if I'm wrong about this. But he doesn't have the safety on his gun, and he accidentally shoots himself in the foot in front of the class.
And then he acts like nothing happened.
And there's a video of it, too. Yeah, he's trying to, like, play it off when he had shot himself in the foot. That's some...
Yeah, that's something I would do. That's why I never went into law enforcement.
That's why you don't have a gun.
Exactly. Well, there's your bless your hearts for the week.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a bless your heart, or you know somebody who's shot themselves in their groin and then told people that the ninjas did it,
Exactly.
all you got to do is go to hitchedtohomicide.com, where there's a pull-down menu.
Yep.
And while you're there, you can also suggest a case.
Yes.
And you can tell us about your own true crime story.
Please do.
That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.